The Forbidden Book. The ancient library stood at the edge of the campus, a monument to forgotten times. Its Gothic architecture, with towering spires and intricate stone carvings, gave it an aura of mystique and foreboding. Most students avoided it, deterred by the eerie silence that seemed to shroud the building like a thick fog. But for David, a curious history major, the library was a treasure trove waiting to be explored. David had always been drawn to the arcane and mysterious. His room was cluttered with old maps, relics, and dusty tomes that whispered secrets of long-forgotten civilizations. One rainy afternoon, he decided to venture into the depths of the library, hoping to unearth something extraordinary for his thesis on occult practices in the medieval period. The library's interior was dimly lit, with narrow corridors lined with bookshelves that stretched towards the ceiling. The air was heavy with the scent of aged paper and leather. David wandered through the maze of knowledge, his fingers brushing against the spines of countless volumes. His footsteps echoed softly, adding to the library's eerie ambience. After hours of searching, David stumbled upon a hidden alcove, partially concealed by a heavy velvet curtain. Curiosity piqued, he pulled the curtain aside and discovered a small, dust-covered wooden door. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. Heart pounding with anticipation, David descended into the unknown. The staircase led to a subterranean chamber, dimly illuminated by flickering torches mounted on the damp stone walls. The room was filled with ancient artifacts and manuscripts, but one object immediately caught David's eye. At the center of the room, on a pedestal of black marble, rested a large, leather-bound book. Its cover was adorned with intricate symbols and an ominous title in a language David couldn't decipher. Compelled by an inexplicable force, David approached the pedestal and gingerly picked up the book. It felt surprisingly warm in his hands, as if it were alive. He carefully opened it, revealing pages filled with elaborate illustrations and cryptic text. The margins were adorned with unsettling drawings of demonic figures and arcane symbols. Despite the unsettling content, David couldn't tear his eyes away. Hours passed as David pored over the book, losing himself in its dark allure. He soon realized that it was a grimoire, an ancient spell book filled with incantations and rituals. One particular spell, written in bold, crimson ink, stood out to him. It was an invocation, a summoning ritual for a powerful entity. David's rational mind urged him to close the book and leave, but his curiosity got the better of him. Under the flickering torchlight, he began to recite the incantation aloud. The words felt foreign and unnatural on his tongue, but he pressed on, driven by a strange compulsion. As he uttered the final syllable, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the torches, plunging the chamber into darkness. The temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with an oppressive presence. In the pitch-black silence, David's heart raced. He could sense something moving in the darkness, a malevolent force that had been unleashed. The ground beneath him trembled, and a deep, guttural growl reverberated through the chamber. Panic set in as he realized the gravity of his actions. He had awakened something ancient and evil, something that should have remained buried. David fumbled for his flashlight, his hands shaking uncontrollably. When he finally managed to turn it on, the beam of light revealed a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a grotesque, otherworldly being with glowing red eyes and twisted horns. The demon's presence filled the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. David's breath caught in his throat as the creature advanced towards him, its malevolent gaze fixed on him. Desperately, David backed away, clutching the forbidden book to his chest. He knew he had to find a way to undo the summoning, to banish the demon back to the abyss from which it had come. But the book offered no guidance, only more cryptic symbols and dark secrets. The demon's growl grew louder, reverberating through the chamber and shaking David to his core. As the demon reached out with clawed hands, David felt a surge of cold terror. He knew that his life, and possibly the lives of many others, now hung in the balance. The forbidden book had unleashed a nightmare, and he was the only one who could stop it. But time was running out, and the demon was closing in. The demon's claws slashed through the air, narrowly missing David as he stumbled backward. His mind raced, searching for a solution, but the panic clouded his thoughts. The chamber seemed to close in on him, the shadows growing darker and more oppressive with each passing second. The demon's eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger, its guttural growls echoing off the stone walls. Desperation fueled David's movements as he scrambled to his feet and dashed toward the narrow staircase. He could hear the demon's heavy footsteps behind him, each one reverberating through his bones. With the forbidden book clutched tightly to his chest, he sprinted up the stairs, the cold air biting at his skin. He burst through the wooden door and into the relative safety of the library above. But safety was an illusion. The demon was relentless, its presence palpable, even as David bolted through the library's labyrinthine corridors. He could hear its growls and feel its cold breath on the back of his neck. His mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what he had unleashed. He needed to find a way to banish the demon, but the book offered no clear answers. David's frantic journey through the library led him to a secluded reading nook, bathed in the dim light of a single flickering lamp. He collapsed into a chair, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He opened the forbidden book, his eyes scanning the pages with a feverish intensity. The illustrations and symbols seemed to writhe and shift before his eyes, mocking his desperation. He turned page after page, searching for a hint, a clue, anything that could help him reverse the summoning. The incantations were written in an ancient language, their meanings obscured by layers of mysticism and secrecy. David's heart sank as he realized the enormity of his mistake. He had meddled with forces beyond his understanding, and now he was paying the price. As he delved deeper into the book, a particular passage caught his eye. It described a ritual of banishment, a way to send the summoned entity back to the abyss. The ritual required a series of complex steps, each one fraught with danger and uncertainty. David knew that he had no choice but to attempt it. The demon's presence was growing stronger, and time was running out. With trembling hands, David began to gather the necessary components for the ritual. The book listed a series of arcane ingredients, each one more obscure and elusive than the last. He scavenged the library, pulling ancient tomes from the shelves and scouring their pages for references. The demon's growls grew louder, echoing through the corridors and sending shivers down his spine. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. David's hands were covered in ink and dust as he carefully measured out the ingredients and inscribed the necessary symbols on the library floor. The air grew thick with the scent of burning herbs and wax, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls. He could feel the demon's presence drawing closer, its malevolent gaze fixed on him. As he completed the final preparations, David's heart pounded in his chest. The ritual required him to recite a series of incantations, each one more complex and perilous than the last. He took a deep breath and began to chant, his voice trembling with fear and determination. The words felt foreign and unnatural on his tongue, but he pressed on, driven by a desperate hope. The air around him seemed to crackle with energy as he continued the incantation. The symbols on the floor glowed with an eerie light, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist in response. David could feel the demon's presence growing stronger, its malevolent energy threatening to overwhelm him. But he couldn't stop now. He had to see the ritual through to the end. As he uttered the final syllable, a blinding light filled the room, and the ground beneath him trembled. The air was filled with a deafening roar, and David felt a surge of energy course through his body. He could see the demon, its form flickering and shifting in the intense light. With a final, agonized scream, the demon was pulled back into the abyss, its presence vanishing in an instant. David collapsed to the floor, his body trembling with exhaustion. The library was eerily silent, the oppressive darkness lifted. He could hardly believe what had just happened. The forbidden book lay open beside him, its pages filled with dark secrets and ancient knowledge. He knew that he could never undo what he had done, but at least the demon was banished. As he lay on the cold stone floor, David's mind raced with thoughts of the future. The forbidden book had revealed a world of dark magic and ancient forces, and he knew that he had only scratched the surface. But for now, he was content to rest, grateful to have survived the ordeal. The library's shadows seemed a little less menacing, and the weight of his actions settled heavily on his shoulders. David's relief was short-lived. Although the immediate threat had been banished, The aftermath of his encounter with the demon left him shaken. He was haunted by the lingering sense of dread and the chilling knowledge of what he had nearly unleashed upon the world. The forbidden book, now closed and resting on the library floor, seemed to mock him with its silent presence. In the days that followed, David struggled to focus on his studies. The library, once a place of scholarly intrigue, now felt like a tomb of ancient horrors. He avoided the basement chamber, where the summoning had occurred, and the memories of the demon's malevolent gaze haunted his dreams. Despite his efforts to distance himself from the incident, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the library had become a place of latent danger. One evening, while reviewing his notes in his dimly lit dorm room, David received an unexpected visit from Professor Edwards, the head of the history department. The professor had always been a mentor to David, offering guidance and insight into the darker aspects of history. However, David couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Professor Edwards' expression was stern, his eyes reflecting a mixture of concern and curiosity. He sat across from David, his gaze fixed on the young student's face. The room was silent except for the occasional rustle of papers and the distant hum of the campus outside. David shifted uncomfortably in his chair, wondering why the professor had sought him out. He could sense that the discussion would not be about his recent academic performance. The professor's eyes flickered towards a stack of books on David's desk, including the forbidden tome that had caused so much trouble. "I understand you've been spending a lot of time in the library lately," Professor Edwards began, his voice measured. "I've heard some unsettling reports about your recent activities. There have been rumors of strange occurrences, disturbances that coincide with your visits to the library's lower levels." David's heart skipped a beat. The professor's words confirmed his fears. He had hoped that the demon's release was an isolated incident, but it seemed that the library's dark secrets had not been fully contained. The professor's gaze was piercing, and David could sense that the man knew more than he was letting on. "I was just conducting some research," David replied cautiously, trying to keep his voice steady. "I found an old book, but it was nothing of consequence. I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to." Professor Edwards studied David for a moment, as if weighing the truth of his words. "I see. Well, it's important that we approach such matters with caution. The library has a long history of holding things best left undisturbed. If you come across anything unusual, I advise you to report it immediately." David nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the professor's warning was more than just professional advice. There was an undercurrent of urgency in the professor's tone, a sense that there were deeper, more dangerous truths hidden within the library's walls. After the professor left, David found himself consumed by a new sense of unease. The demon was gone, but the forbidden book remained, a constant reminder of the peril he had unleashed. He knew he had to find out more about the book and its origins to understand the full extent of what he had disturbed. That night, David made his way back to the library, his mind racing with questions. The building was quiet, its usual atmosphere of academic serenity now tainted by a sense of looming danger. He descended the staircase to the subterranean chamber, his flashlight casting long, flickering shadows on the stone walls. The chamber was as he had left it, though it felt colder and more oppressive. The forbidden book lay where it had fallen, its leather cover slightly ajar. David approached it cautiously, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. He needed answers, and he was willing to face whatever darkness lay within those pages. With a deep breath, David reopened the book, carefully turning its pages to the section where he had found the summoning ritual. The text was as cryptic as ever, the symbols and incantations still shrouded in mystery. He needed help, someone with knowledge of the occult and ancient texts, to decipher the book's secrets. David's thoughts turned to Professor Edwards. The professor had hinted at a deeper understanding of the library's secrets, and David wondered if he could offer the guidance he needed. But he also knew that seeking help from someone as knowledgeable and enigmatic as the professor carried its own risks. The library held many secrets, and not all of them were benign. As David continued to study the book, a chilling realization dawned on him. The demon had been banished, but the power of the book was far from exhausted. The library, with its hidden chambers and arcane knowledge, was a place of profound danger. He was only beginning to scratch the surface of a deeper, more insidious threat. With renewed resolve, David decided to delve deeper into the library's history, to uncover the origins of the forbidden book and the dark forces it contained. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but he knew he had to face it. The safety of the library, and perhaps even the world beyond, depended on the knowledge he sought and the actions he took. As the night wore on, David remained in the chamber, the forbidden book open before him. The shadows seemed to dance with a life of their own, and the oppressive silence was punctuated only by the soft rustle of turning pages. He was determined to confront the darkness that lurked within the library, no matter the cost. David's investigation into the forbidden book and the library's secrets became an obsession. Every day he pored over ancient texts, obscure manuscripts, and historical records, trying to piece together the puzzle of the dark forces he had unwittingly unleashed. He spent long hours in the library, often losing track of time as he dug deeper into the murky depths of occult knowledge. His research revealed disturbing facts about the library's past. It was built on the site of an old abbey, which had been rumored to have been a center for dark rituals and forbidden practices centuries ago. The monks who once inhabited the abbey were said to have delved into necromancy and summoning, seeking to harness otherworldly powers. The library, constructed in its place, was rumored to house remnants of those ancient, dark practices. David learned of a secret society that had once guarded the library's hidden knowledge. This society had been dedicated to ensuring that dangerous texts and artifacts remained concealed from the public eye. They had gone to great lengths to protect the world from the sinister forces contained within the library's walls. However, their efforts had not been entirely successful, and some of the most dangerous texts had slipped through the cracks. The more David uncovered, the more he realized the gravity of his situation. The forbidden book was not an isolated artifact, but part of a larger collection of dark tomes and relics. Each one held a fragment of a greater, malevolent power that had been meticulously hidden away for centuries. The library's very foundations were steeped in ancient sorcery and dark rituals. One evening, while David was researching late into the night, he received a strange email. It was from an anonymous sender, containing a single line of text: "The knowledge you seek is buried deeper than you know. Beware the shadows." Attached was a cryptic image of a hidden chamber within the library, marked with symbols similar to those in the forbidden book. David's heart raced as he stared at the image. It showed a concealed room behind a hidden wall, its entrance partially obscured by a stack of old books. The symbols on the wall matched those he had seen in the forbidden book. The email's ominous warning only heightened his sense of dread, but it also sparked a fierce determination within him. He had to find this hidden chamber and uncover the full extent of the library's secrets. The next day, David made his way to the library, his mind focused on the hidden room. He navigated through the labyrinth of shelves and corridors, following the clues from the image. His pulse quickened as he approached the area depicted in the photograph. He searched the shelves and the surrounding walls, looking for any sign of the hidden entrance. After hours of fruitless searching, David finally found what he was looking for. Behind a row of dusty volumes, he discovered a small, concealed latch. With trembling fingers, he pulled it open, revealing a narrow passageway. The air was thick with the musty scent of forgotten knowledge as he stepped inside, the dim beam of his flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. The passageway led to a hidden chamber, its walls lined with shelves filled with ancient scrolls and grimoires. The chamber was illuminated by a single, flickering candle, casting a ghostly glow on the room's contents. At the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, upon which rested a large, ornate box. David approached the pedestal, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The box was adorned with intricate carvings and symbols, similar to those found in the forbidden book. He could sense a powerful, dark energy emanating from it. With great care, he opened the box, revealing a collection of ancient artifacts and texts, each one more sinister than the last. Among the items was a scroll that caught David's eye. It was bound in aged leather, its surface covered in cryptic symbols and diagrams. The scroll seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, and David could feel a cold chill as he unrolled it. The text described a series of dark rituals, each one more complex and dangerous than the last. As he studied the scroll, David realized that it contained instructions for summoning and controlling demonic entities. The rituals were designed to tap into ancient powers and harness them for malevolent purposes. David's blood ran cold as he understood the full extent of the danger he faced. The forbidden book was just one piece of a larger, more insidious puzzle. The hidden chamber also contained a journal, its pages filled with detailed accounts of the society's efforts to contain and control the dark forces. The journal described numerous attempts to seal away dangerous artifacts and prevent their misuse. It was clear that the society had been engaged in a constant battle against the dark forces that lurked within the library. As David read through the journal, he came across a passage that caught his attention. It spoke of a final, desperate ritual performed by the society's members to protect the world from the most dangerous entities. The ritual required a powerful artifact known as the Celestial Seal, which had been hidden away to ensure its safety. David realized that the Celestial Seal was crucial to stopping the dark forces he had inadvertently unleashed. He had to find it and use it to seal away the malevolent entities once and for all. But the journal offered no clues to its location. The search for the Celestial Seal would be his next challenge, and he knew that time was running out. As he prepared to leave the hidden chamber, David felt a sense of urgency and determination. The library's dark secrets were more extensive and dangerous than he had imagined, and he was now deeply entangled in a struggle against forces beyond his understanding. The Celestial Seal was his only hope of preventing further catastrophe. With the weight of this new knowledge pressing down on him, David set out on a new quest, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. David's search for the Celestial Seal led him deeper into the labyrinthine depths of the library. Each step was a careful negotiation of shadows and silence, his footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. The library, once a place of academic pursuit, had become a maze of hidden dangers and ancient secrets. The sense of urgency was palpable, driving him forward despite the mounting fear and exhaustion. His first stop was the archives, a vast room filled with historical records and forgotten manuscripts. He sifted through dusty shelves and ancient files, searching for any reference to the Celestial Seal. The journal had mentioned that the artifact was closely guarded, its location known only to a select few. Finding any trace of its existence would be a monumental task. Hours turned into days as David pored over every document he could find. He uncovered references to ancient protective wards and ceremonial objects, but nothing that directly indicated the location of the Celestial Seal. The weight of his mission felt heavier with each passing moment, the knowledge that he was racing against time pressing down on him. One evening, as David was about to give up hope, he discovered an old, leather-bound ledger tucked away in a forgotten corner of the archives. The ledger was filled with meticulous records of the library's acquisitions and the history of its artifacts. As he flipped through its pages, one entry caught his eye, a description of a secret vault, hidden deep within the library, where the most dangerous and powerful artifacts were stored. The ledger mentioned that the vault was protected by complex magical wards and hidden mechanisms, requiring both knowledge and skill to access. David's heart raced as he realized that this vault might hold the Celestial Seal. He had to find it, no matter the cost. Armed with the information from the ledger, David set out to locate the secret vault. He navigated the library's lower levels, his flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air grew colder and more oppressive as he approached the area described in the ledger. He found a concealed door, partially hidden behind a bookshelf filled with ancient volumes. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit passage. The passage led to a heavily fortified chamber, its entrance guarded by elaborate magical wards and symbols. David's heart pounded as he carefully examined the protective barriers. The wards were intricate and unfamiliar, their patterns shifting and glowing with an otherworldly light. He knew that breaching them would require both caution and knowledge. Using the information he had gathered from the forbidden book and the journal, David attempted to decipher the wards. His hands trembled as he worked, the pressure of the task weighing heavily on him. He meticulously followed the instructions, carefully manipulating the symbols and incantations required to disable the wards. After what felt like an eternity, The last ward flickered and dissolved, leaving the chamber's entrance unprotected. David pushed open the heavy door, revealing a vast vault filled with ancient relics and artifacts. The chamber was illuminated by a soft, ethereal glow, casting an otherworldly light on the contents within. At the center of the vault, on a pedestal of polished obsidian, rested the celestial seal. The artifact was a beautifully crafted amulet, its surface etched with intricate patterns and glowing with a faint, celestial light. David approached the pedestal with reverence, knowing that this artifact was his key to sealing away the dark forces he had inadvertently released. With careful hands, David took the celestial seal from its pedestal. The amulet felt warm and pulsating, its power resonating through his fingertips. He could sense its protective energy, a stark contrast to the malevolent forces that had plagued the library. David knew that the artifact held the power to reverse the damage and restore balance. As he prepared to leave the vault, David felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The chamber's temperature dropped, and a chilling presence filled the air. He turned to find the demon's form emerging from the shadows, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. The creature had found its way back, drawn by the power of the celestial seal. David's pulse quickened as he faced the demon. He knew that he had to act quickly to use the artifact's power. With trembling hands, he held the celestial seal aloft, reciting the incantations he had learned from the forbidden book and the journal. The amulet's light intensified, casting a blinding radiance throughout the chamber. The demon roared in anger and pain as the light of the celestial seal engulfed it. The creature writhed and twisted, its form becoming increasingly unstable. The chamber was filled with a deafening roar as the demon was drawn toward the artifact's power. David's heart raced as he continued the incantation, his voice steady despite his fear. With a final, agonized scream, the demon was pulled into the celestial seal, its form vanishing in a burst of light. The chamber fell silent, the oppressive presence dissipating. David collapsed to the ground, his strength depleted but his heart filled with a sense of profound relief. As he looked around the vault, David realized that he had succeeded in his quest. The celestial seal had contained the demon, and the library's dark forces had been subdued. The hidden vault was now a place of containment, ensuring that the dark artifacts remained sealed away. David emerged from the library, the weight of his mission lifted. The once foreboding building now seemed less menacing, its shadows less threatening. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but he knew that the knowledge he had uncovered would stay with him forever. The forbidden book and the dark forces it had unleashed were now contained, but David understood that the library's secrets were far from fully explored. The world was filled with ancient mysteries and hidden dangers, and he would continue to seek out and understand them, always mindful of the delicate balance between light and darkness.